Most people assume that if their role changed significantly, they'd know. There'd be a conversation, a restructuring announcement, some formal moment where the change became official. But that's not how it usually happens. Organizations rarely eliminate roles directly. They redesign them quietly, piece by piece, decision by decision, until the role you thought you had is gone. And by the time most people realize it, the process is already done. Your title hasn't changed. Your salary hasn't changed. On paper, everything looks the same. But something has shifted in the nature of your work. Responsibilities you used to own are now shared or gone entirely. Decisions you used to make now require additional approval. People who used to report to you or work alongside you are now getting direction from somewhere else. And the work that used to define your role, the work that made it meaningful, is quietly moving towards other people or other functions or other priorities. Nothing was announced, no conversation happened, but your role is different from what it was. And if you're honest with yourself, it's been different for a while. And this video is about the specific signals that tell you your role is being redesigned around you, why organizations do it this way, and what to do about it before the process is done. I'm Thomas Schmidt, and over 3 decades of executive leadership, I've watched this process unfold from the inside. I've seen it happen to people who never saw it coming, and I've watched the ones who caught it early change the outcome. And that's why I talk about it on this channel. And if this kind of straight talk about how organizations actually work is helpful to you, consider subscribing, because catching this early is what keeps your options open, and missing it is what closes them. Why do they do it this way? Before the signals, it's worth understanding why organizations redesign roles quietly rather than having direct conversations. The answer is risk management. A direct conversation about reducing someone's scope, eliminating their responsibilities, or repositioning their role creates immediate consequences. The person may simply disengage, or they may leave before the organization is ready. They may push back in ways that create friction. They may escalate or create legal exposure. So the quiet redesign avoids all of that. And by making small incremental changes, each one individually justifiable, the organization creates the same outcome without triggering the reaction a direct conversation would produce. And from the inside, each change looks like an operational decision. A process improvement, a structural adjustment, a temporary shift in the priorities. But the cumulative effect is a role that no longer resembles what it was, and a professional who's now significantly more vulnerable than they were 12 months ago, without anyone having said a single difficult word to them directly. The signals to watch for. Well, here are the specific signals that tell you this is happening. The first signal, your decision authority is shrinking. Decisions that used to be yours now require sign-off from someone else. Approvals that used to flow through you are now going around you. And the explanation is always reasonable. So it's a new process. It's a governance change, a restructuring of accountability. But the cumulative effect is clear. The scope of what you can actually decide is narrower than it was. And narrowing decision authority is one of the clearest signals that a role is being redesigned. The second signal is your scope is being distributed. Responsibilities that used to sit with you are quietly moving to other people, sometimes framed as delegation, sometimes framed as efficiency, sometimes framed as development for someone more junior. But the pattern is consistent. More of what defined your role is now being done by others. And what's left is a more narrow version of the role that you were hired for or promoted into. The third signal, you're being included later. In conversations that relate directly to your area, you're finding out about decisions after they've been made. You're being informed rather than consulted, briefed rather than included in the thinking. That shift from being part of the conversation to being updated on the outcome signals that the organization has already repositioned who owns that territory. And your role within it has shifted from strategic to operational without anyone announcing it. The fourth signal, a layer has appeared above you. A new role, a new leader, or a new reporting structure has been inserted between you and the people you used to report to directly. The framing is usually organizational growth or structural efficiency. But the practical effect is that your access to senior leadership now runs through someone else, and your visibility above your level has significantly reduced. Layering is one of the most common mechanisms organizations use to reduce someone's influence without changing their title. The fifth signal, your replacement is being quietly developed. Someone more junior is being given increasing exposure to the work that defines your role. They're being brought into conversations that were previously yours, given responsibilities that are clearly developmental in the direction of where you sit. The organization rarely announces that this is succession planning. It's framed as development, mentoring, building organizational capability. But the trajectory is visible if you're willing to look at it honestly. What to do about it? Well, if you recognize 2 or more of these signals in your situation, the time to act is now, not after the process is done. So first, name what you're seeing directly. Most professionals avoid naming what they're observing because naming it makes it real. But the earlier you name it, to yourself and to the right people, the more options you have. Find the right moment with your direct leader and ask them clearly. I've noticed some shifts in how my role is being defined. I want to make sure I understand what's changing and how I'm being positioned going forward. Can we talk about it directly? That conversation, and especially the way your leader responds to it, will tell you more about your situation than months of observation will. Second, reassert your ownership deliberately. The quiet redesign works partly because most professionals don't actively defend their scope. They accept the small changes as reasonable and move on. The counter is to be deliberate about reasserting your contribution in the areas being quietly redistributed. Not defensively, but making your involvement visible, valuable, and difficult to route around. Third, expand your footprint laterally. If your current role is shrinking, grow in adjacent directions. Volunteer for cross-functional work. Build relationships in areas the organization is investing in. Attach yourself to new priorities before your existing role becomes the only thing people associate you with. The professionals who survive role redesigns are almost never the ones who defended their existing territory most fiercely. They're the ones who became valuable in the new territory where the old one disappeared. Fourth, assess your external options now. Not because you're definitely leaving, but because understanding your market value changes how clearly you see your situation. When staying feels like the only option, you tend to tolerate it more than you should. When you know your options, you negotiate from a fundamentally different position. Reconnect with your network. Understand what your skills are worth outside of your current organization. Not as an exit strategy, but as clarity. The change that already happened. So here's what I want you to take away. Role redesign is one of the most common and least discussed mechanisms organizations use to manage people out, or to significantly reduce their influence, without the friction of a direct conversation. It works because each individual change is justifiable, and because the person experiencing it tends to explain each change away rather than reading the pattern. But the pattern is the signal, not the individual decisions. The professionals who navigate this well are not the ones who never experienced it. They're the ones who read the pattern early, while they still have enough leverage, enough visibility, and enough options to do something meaningful about it. So if you're seeing 2 or more of the signals we discussed today, don't explain them away individually. Read them together, because together they may be telling you something your organization has chosen not to say out loud. And if this hit close to home, let me know in the comments below. Until next time, take care, be kind to yourself, and keep leaning into what makes you strong. And I'll see you in the next one.